Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to Andrew Leahey. There's more than one way to heart the 80s. Just ask him. Anyone who has spent some quality time soaking up the nostalgic vibes of this Virginia-reared, Nashville-based singer-songwriter and guitarist already knows he has a soft spot for the decade when he was born. But on Kick, Move, Shake, his latest love letter to the 80s, Leahy displays his deep dedication in some surprising new ways by, yes, shaking things up, moving his radio dial to a new station, and ultimately by delivering some satisfyingly poppy kicks along the way. With the album out now, Leahy got on the Zoom after a gig in Norway to talk about his old school approach, his other career as a music journalist, the many splendors of hotel TV, and much more. Enjoy.
I've got we're in an Airbnb in Bergen, Norway. Um and I'm here with some friends who are packing up their bags. I won't show them to you, but Hannah Aldridge and Katie Bates, who I'm sure say hello. I think you guys have covered Hannah at your outlet in the past.
Probably. I was looking her up to see who you were on tour with.
Yeah, we were out with Sam Outlaw, and that was for about like 2.5 weeks. We were all in his band. Then he flew back, and then I was opening up for Hannah and playing keys in her band and guitar. And now she's flying back tomorrow, and the bass player and I go and play with an Australian band called the Pleasures, and I open up for them, play keys in their band. Then they go back, and then Hannah comes back here, and I play guitar for her. It's just a constant swap of musicians, but it's really fun.
I was going to ask, is that good? Is that a good thing? You like this?
It's
Just
good for
being busy
me.
all the time?
Yeah, I was explaining to Hannah. I like to be the guy. I like to be the front person who gets to play his songs, but I also like to be the guy behind the guy or gal in her case or Elizabeth Cook's case, where you get to kind of help another person with their vision. And so an experience like this or a tour like this where I get to open and then I get to also play with the headliner. Like to me, that's the best of both worlds. Um,
Hmm.
and a show kind of can't be long enough. I don't think it's been years since I've played a show that I thought, man, this is like too much music in one night. So I never mind playing two sets in one night.
Well, and you just played a show like tonight, right before we talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, because it's like midnight there, and
It
I got to say, you look fresh as a daisy, fit as a fiddle. You don't look like a guy who's been working hard, sweating,
Well, I mean, if I can be honest, we got back here and we all put on like our pajamas, and then right before midnight, I went back and changed into my gig clothes again, just because otherwise you'd be talking to me in gym shorts and a tank top, and that doesn't feel
Uh-huh.
very podcast worthy.
All right. So I mean, what do you do after a show generally? Just kind of go back and relax and go to sleep. There's no sort of you're wound up and have to run down the street and do crazy things, or
I get pretty wound up. No, it depends. Each band has its own post-show
sure.
rituals. With Elizabeth Cook, if we're on tour, the ritual with that is to usually go to a gas station on the way back to the hotel, and the people who drink will get beer. I don't drink. Usually, I'll get some kind of like snack or something, and then go back and watch hotel TV, which is a very specific thing. And what makes good hotel TV, it doesn't always make good TV in general. With Sam Outlaw, I think the post show ritual was usually just go back to the hotel and go to sleep immediately because we have to wake up in 4 hours and drive to another country.
And you
Um,
could do that though. You don't have like an adrenaline thing still going on, or you can,
I always have the
uh
adrenaline thing. I mean, on tour, I've been out for 6 weeks, maybe. How long have we been on tour? You've been on
18
tour forever.
years.
So I'm talking to Hannah right now. I mean, I've been on tour for like a month and a half maybe, and haven't slept much at all. But I think the adrenaline of the tour kind of keeps you going. Then you come home afterwards, and your body realizes that it hasn't, that you've only eaten pizza, once a day for like 2 months, and that's when you have a big old crash. But no, I mean, usually in general, after a gig, it takes me a while to wind down.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how are things going in Norway? Do they like you in Norway? Are you big in Norway?
Yeah, Norway's amazing.
Yeah.
I
I've
think
been there. I love it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I used to be big in Norway. I used to come here every
And now you're
year.
smaller.
I think I need to get big again in Norway. I used to come here every year.
Hmm.
I began coming over here because some I mean, they're my friends now, but they at the time were just, really big music fans. They would come to Americana Fest in Nashville every
Hmm.
year. They lived in Norway and they were just like real big fans of John Latham. I play music with him. And they kind of learned about me because of that. And then they began bringing me over every summer. So I would do it yearly. And then since COVID, I've gotten here a lot less frequently, but
Hmm.
it feels great. I mean, they love Americana music. They love Nashville music. At least this one particular community does. So I feel like when I began coming over here, I already had a certain, I don't know, I got to cut, ahead in line just by virtue of where I live, I
Yeah,
think.
that's got to be so weird. I mean, because your records go all over the world, obviously, but
Yeah.
it must be interesting that in some certain pockets for inexplicable reasons, you'll be more popular in this city than some other city, or it's got to be kind of a one of those weird things that
It
crop up in
really
a job like
is.
that.
Well, like if you can as an artist you can kind of log into the back end of like Apple Music or
Right.
Spotify and you can see where your music is getting, streamed on Apple Music. You can see where your music is getting played on radio stations. And it'll be like one town in Belgium or one town
Yeah.
in Germany and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I mean I should really reach out. I mean there's one radio station in London that's played me more than anyone else.
Get on
I don't
that.
know if
Yeah.
it's yeah, and maybe it's
Yeah.
an online radio station. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Who
where I'm
knows? Like
from,
who
there
knows
was
why
a
your music goes where it goes?
Yeah, I don't know where I'm from. There was a local band back in the '70s who, for some weird inexplicable reason, they were just like a local bar club band, working guys, and they
Yeah.
had put out a single, and it was number one in Guatemala, and they got flown down to Guatemala, and it was Beatlemania, and people chasing them down the street, and
Well,
bizarre.
so there's hope. There's hope for me yet, is what you're
In
saying.
Guatemala for sure.
And
Well, before we
I would
go
take
on,
that.
before we go on and talk about Kick Move Shake, I want to ask you. I want to
Yeah.
go back to something before I forget. Hotel
Yeah.
TV
Oh
different
yeah.
from regular. Are you talking about like the station that you turn on that shows like where the health club is and all that, or what are you talking about
No,
here?
I'm really really glad you asked about Hotel Ted
Oh, sure. Well, the
TV.
important
Yeah.
questions cannot go untouched. Yeah.
The I'm just saying what makes for quality entertainment
Uh-huh.
usually would not be like a Nicolas Cage movie or a Mel Gibson movie. There's just like a very specific kind of movie where if you're in a
Hmm.
hotel room and you need to wind down, or maybe you need to repack your bag,
Uh-huh.
or you're gonna like take a shower, but you want to crank the TV so you can kind of hear it while you're in the shower. Um, and that kind of like perfect movie comes on the TV, just it feels so good. And I don't even really know what the metrics would be, but I think maybe a movie that would normally get a B rating or a B minus, it becomes an A plus in a hotel.
Okay. Any examples you could think of off the top of your head? Last good
Uh,
hotel movie you saw?
Last good hotel movie, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta in Face Off.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean,
Perfect hotel
I
movie.
think you
And
can kind of just go for the Nicolas Cage, John Travolta, either or oeuvre right there.
any Nicolas Cage movie, for
Yeah.
sure. I
Okay.
was
Cool.
we were in Austria a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I got to watch SpongeBob SquarePants in German. And just to hear the theme song was crazy. And then after that, it went to the movie Starship Troopers in German. And that was, a night of great hotel TV as well.
All right, fair enough. So let's
It's good.
hey, when
There,
it's true, it's true. So let's move on to kick, move, shake, which I keep
please.
wanting to call kickball change, like you're some sort of choreographer thing going on here, but that's not what it is.
If you saw me
Um,
dance, you wouldn't confuse it with that.
I await the day in your video. So there's obviously some kind of a sonic stylistic shift that's going
Yeah.
on here in compared to what you've done before.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
what prompted all this?
I was just talking about this. I think as not just as artists, but I think as any kind of music fan, I think the music that you hear when you're really young kind of imprints itself on you.
Sure.
Um, and for better or for worse, I think for better, the 1980s was just, the era that I was born into, and I was really young when that era ended. But I do remember kind of like looking out the window as I, was like driven around in the station wagon by my mom or something, and whatever was on the radio was on the radio, and just it always seemed to kind of perfectly suit the landscape outside. um, and then like lately I hear a lot of the kind of influence of the 1980s coming back, whether
Mhm.
it's a band like the 1975 or Chapel Roan, or just I like that music. Like, to me it feels really immersive, and it's really a different way of playing guitar. um you know
Mhm.
uh, I think with Americana, which is what I explored on the first record for sure, and kind of on the other records, it's more about kind of like big chords. It's but with like this kind of music now, it's almost like you narrow the chords, and maybe like you like split up the parts amongst like a two or three guitars, and
Right.
each guitar plays a smaller kind of like snippet of what you used to play with one guitar, and then you can kind of like move them around the musical space, and just like it feels like a puzzle kind of blocking into place. It's
Hmm.
headphone music, and it's a kind of style that I think the production is not as important as the songwriting. That's not the right way to put it, but just you can really sink your teeth into production. So as a co-producer
Hmm.
on this record, that was just like a thing that we got to explore. Like, how do we make it sound just full of ear candy, but also try to keep the song, like a front and center, which I hope we did. I think we did.
Oh yeah, definitely. Mission accomplished. Did you start with this? Did this start with an idea of I want to make an album that sounds like this, or was this something that kind of came out as you were writing and maybe demoing and putting things down and going, oh, you
Yeah.
know what? Here's the direction to go in.
Oh, were you the one who wrote the review on the album on
On my
your
site, yeah, I'm the
yes.
only, yeah, that's me, yeah.
My man. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, like you noted, there's ever since Airwaves, which is the 2019 album, I think that's my sophomore
Right.
record.
Yeah.
There have always been like two or three tracks on each album that kind of scratch that itch.
Right.
Um, you know, um, and like on Airwaves, it was more, kind of like big guitars with some, like a
Hmm.
reverb, but there were some songs like Flyover Country or Moving Like the Weather, that kind of got into a little bit of the 80s. And then the two albums that came after that, the American Static project, there was a song called Become the Enemy, which was really 80s, almost like a Talking Heads song. So it was always something that I kind of touched on. But that looks hilarious. Sorry, the
It's
the
okay.
girls on tour are like packing up and putting on all their show outfits over their pajamas. um but so it's very funny. So like it's a style that I've always kind of like hinted at, but often if you're working with a producer, especially in Nashville, and you say like, I want all the reverb you can possibly give me on the snare
Right.
drum, they'll say, oh, you don't want that. You don't like, I mean, it can almost be a faux pas to in Americana music to really lean into that. So I think it took me like finding the right partner, which I found in Gregory Latimer, who produced the bulk
Hmm.
of this record. And then it just also took me kind of being able to say, I play with a bunch of Americana artists. I'm able to scratch that itch of the raw, organic music when I play with Elizabeth Cook, or when I play with Sam, or when I play with Hannah Aldridge, and I love that kind of music. But if I'm able to do it already, why not use my solo career to do what I'm not able to do with other bands? I would love to play with some, more pop rock, acts, but I haven't gotten the invitation. So I've got to like create my own invitation, and that's what this record is.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, did that wanting to go deeper into that concept, did that influence the way that you were writing some of these songs? Because I mean, you obviously you could take these songs and recast them into
Yeah,
roots rock or heavy metal or any genre you wanted.
sure. Which is kind of what I did tonight in Bergen. I played
Yeah.
like a little bit of that show solo, and then I played a bit of it with my friend Katie Bates. And yeah, songs that on the record have a bunch of keyboards on them, or like maybe we kind of like you know in the production, it sounds like a drum machine, even though it's a real drum set. When you know, like break them down and you're just playing with, you know, with two guitars, you know, it's hard to hear that.
Right.
And they, you know, I think they sound like they could have been on airwaves, just, you know, less keyboards on that record. I'm trying to think. I mean, like half of the record I co-wrote with guys who, you know, had played in my band for a long time, and usually I write alone. And that, at least like for me, it tends to lend itself more to an Americana sound, because if I have a guitar at home, it's usually going to be an acoustic guitar that I'm writing on, and it's going to, you know, wind up like being a chord-based song,
Right.
and the presentation is going to be more kind of like a Tom Petty thing. You know, but when you're working with the band, you can have the groove kind of be a big part of the genesis of the song. And then once you already have another instrument like taking care of that rhythm, as a guitarist, I find that I can do like different things on guitar that are less chord based and more riff based, which is how you get a song like Horizonless from my record,
Hmm.
or the one that got away came back. You know, like I wrote that with my bandmates and I was playing keyboards. And again, I think it took the collaboration to you know, kind of to get to the poppier place.
Mm. What was the collaboration also part of the whole just wanting to change things up and not do what you've been doing, previously, or was there some other kind of impetus for it?
Honestly, I think this is a problem that a lot of Nashville band leaders have. I mean, I'm sure like band leaders across the world have this issue. It's just really hard to keep a band. It's hard to keep a constant band. And I'm an extrovert. And I care way too much about having other people around me. I do not like being alone. And so I was really trying to invest in my bandmates who are also my best friends. And so in the past, it would just be like me kind of coming in and saying, here are all these songs. Let's, you know, like let's record them. And I tried to, you know, come up with the songs with them there. And yeah, I think it was kind of just like making it a little bit more of a group effort and less of a, you know, like follow the leader kind of thing, because nobody likes that.
And are you satisfied with and happy with the way it turned out, or is this something that you've gone, oh, I'm never doing that again?
No, it's my favorite record.
Okay. But you
I
are
love listening
required by
to it.
law to say that.
No, I have, I mean, if I can be honest,
Uh-huh.
I'd rather nobody listen to my debut album from 2016. I can't listen to it. All I can hear is just how green I was, and I can
Sure.
hear all the mistakes, and I can hear like, oh, you know, we recorded that in 10 days. And so that's about like one song a day. And so if we, you know, if it was like 3 p.m. and the way that we were trying to record a song wasn't really working, we usually just said, well, we can't restart it. It's like 3 p.m. So like
Right.
it's gonna be what it's gonna be. With this record, we were so meticulous. It took like a year and a half.
Well, obviously. Yeah. I mean, you can
And
hear
usually
it
what
in
would
the
happen,
layers and everything. Yeah.
yeah, and like usually I would bring in a band and we would do one day and just get the drums and the bass if I wasn't playing the bass. I mean, I played, I don't know, I mean, maybe like two-thirds of the parts are me, because we would spend one day, you know, with other musicians,
So you
and then
relinquished
everything
control
else.
on one hand
That's true.
and then
Yeah.
took it back with the other hand.
Guilty. Yeah. And then the rest of it was just, you know, Gregory Latimer and I just kind of like spending 3 or 4 additional like days per track, just kind of
Mhm.
going through and being like, what can we add here? What can we add here? And I'd never done that before. Um,
Were
and
there
it was great.
specific sounds you were chasing, or specific artists that you were going, or specific records where you were maybe bringing them into him and going, this sound, or this drum patch, or this, tone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love In Excess. And I think they're a great example of like how you had a guitar band in
Hmm.
a pop rock context in the 80s. So we were channeling a lot of that for sure. And their, you know, I mean, like their biggest album is called Kick. So that is, you know, a pretty big nod to them with just, you know, my album title. So we were listening to a lot of that. Um, I mean, we would pull up examples like Howard Jones,
Hmm.
for some keyboard sounds. The last track on the album, Use Your Daylight, I
Hmm.
thought it would be cool kind of to, you know, channel like a, I don't know, like a soft rock, like Phil Collins kind of
Yeah.
sound. I mean, you know, like the first album I ever bought with my own money was a Phil Collins album. Um,
I won't tell
yeah, there
anybody.
were, I mean, so this whole record, yeah, I've spent, I don't know, you know, like 10 years, no, more than that. How long have I been in Nashville? Like 15 years.
Uh-huh.
trying really hard to like maintain a spot in the cool kids club or something, and there's like a certain catalog you're supposed to listen to, and you're supposed to say that you love the band and you love Lucinda Williams and you love Graham Parsons. And I'm not talking shit on any of those
No, and you
people,
do obviously, but you
but
can it goes beyond that, right? Yeah,
I also like
yeah,
I like Don Henley's solo stuff.
right,
And I like Brian Adams, not just Ryan Adams. Well, I guess we're not supposed to like Ryan Adams right now, but I like Brian Adams and always have equally as much.
sure.
Um, and so with this, yeah, with this record, I think it was, as much about giving myself license just to say I- I'm classified as an Americana artist, and this is in no way, shape, or form an Americana record, and that's okay.
Yeah. Were you using any kind of vintage synths and gear or anything, or was this all just stuff you could do with patches and kind of using new instruments to sound like old ones?
Sure, I think it was all real. I think the only song that has a drum machine maybe is Sleepwalking the Ceiling. And that,
Really?
we did
Hmm.
we did what Boys of Summer like it did. Oh, and by the way, that you asked about like specific songs or specific artists. Like, Boys of
Right.
Summer is one of my like top songs of all time.
Mm,
And I think you can really hear that in a song like Phosphorescent, track one
right.
on the record. But so what they did in Boys of Summer was use a drum machine, but then have like real organic drums, like overdubbed in the drum fills or the toms, that kind of thing.
Right.
So we did that. Um, but I mean, we used in terms of keyboards, we used a Prophet. We used a box. Is it a Mini Logue? Is that how you pronounce it? Or Korg Mini Logue? Um, I can play piano. I'm kind of new to playing keys, honestly. So when it comes to keyboard gear, I kind of don't know what I'm doing. It's almost like when you go from acoustic guitar to an electric guitar, you realize that they are the same instrument, but they're also absolutely not the same instrument.
Right.
It's like that going from like upright piano to keyboards. So I don't even know some of the gear that we used. And in terms of guitar, it would have been less, Gibson guitar. I play a Les Paul. That's what has been on all the other records. And it was not exclusively that. It was more, like a Stratocaster guitars, because that kind of gives the right 80s sound.
Right.
So, more of a Fender album, and not exclusively a Gibson album.
Right. Talking about the first song, and even on Horizonless, the one after that, I kind of heard a little bit of almost a tropical Caribbean thing in there because you've got some of those lilty. I mean, I think Phosphorescent has like a steel drum kind of keyboard setting on some of those things. So you kind of get that little Caribbean
Yeah,
lilt in there too.
I hear what you're. I hear
Yeah.
what well, then like Horizonless, there was kind of like a buoyant keyboard sound,
Yeah,
like
there's
doot,
a
doot,
lot
doot,
of the
doot.
songs kind of have a little more of that, I don't know, lilt or bounce to them.
Sure. Oh, and
Very poppy.
that's also why I called it, kick, move, shake. I mean, it's a literal kind of like a move, not away from what I've done, but a move beyond,
Hmm.
what I've done in the past. And then it just like and like it moves, it literally moves.
Right.
Like like in the past, you make these records and then I don't know, maybe like half of it, if you're lucky, is something that would sound good live because it's, really up tempo. But then you also have all these ballads that, you have to kind of like think about where you put them in the show. You don't want to necessarily lead off with the ballad. You don't want to have multiple ballads in a row. I kind of wanted to have a record where it's just like any of these songs. I mean, I have one ballad at the very end, but any of these songs
Yeah,
could be played
you're
live.
contractually obligated.
Yeah, and it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier for me to write a slower song. It's harder to write a fast song. So that was
Really?
also part of the challenge, like make an album that is fast and upbeat.
Why is that? Why is that harder?
I don't know. I wonder if I mean, it's just so much easier for me to write a slower song that I just kind of
Huh.
assumed it was that way for everybody. Um, I don't know. Maybe if you're writing alone, it's just easier.
You're just a wimpy guy who writes ballads, is that what you're saying?
That's me. I guess maybe that's me. Yeah. But I think with each album I've done, there have been less and less ballads, and that's me trying to challenge myself and saying like, don't do the slow thing. I also just
Yeah.
I don't do real compelling. I don't know. I think I'm more compelling when I'm fast. Like I'm, like Hannah Aldridge is here, like packing up her bags, and my favorite songs of hers are the slower ones.
Mm,
Um, but for some reason, I don't do that as well.
mm. So you talk about, transitioning this to the live arena. Is that I mean, do you want to be able to take this out and reproduce the songs as they are on the album, or are you, kind of stuck in this, well, I'd like to, but I got two guitars and yeah, and I don't have
Yeah.
enough money to do all this, you know?
The money thing is a challenge. I mean,
Yeah,
I used to only like allow myself, like to rest if I had like a schedule of like 100 gigs or more every year. That was what I did every year in the 2010s. Of course, COVID kind of like changed everything.
sure.
And now it is harder to just like maintain a
Oh yeah.
band on the road. It costs so much. But I mean, earlier this summer we went out, we did some music festivals, we did some other gigs, and I brought a keyboardist along. So it was my
Mm,
usual band, a four piece with the keyboardist, and adding a fifth member as a keyboardist, you might as well add like 12 extra members. It
right.
expands so much what you can do. Especially me as a lead guitarist, like to have another lead instrument that can kind of, like lay the bed or that carpet of sound.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like responsible for that. Um, it makes it so much easier to play these songs in particular. But there are instances like tonight in Bergen where it's just me and one other musician.
Right.
And I did have a keyboard there, but I wasn't using it on my set. Um, and then you can kind of explore what the songs are at the core, which are still, melody driven songs like what I've always done. But it would be ideal to, play as a five piece. I've got a couple gigs left at the end of the year, and that'll be as a five piece. And my other job, I'm a music journalist,
Yes.
like yourself, and that job kind of exists so I can do things like this. So I can be a little foolish maybe with my music career, or you know, like take a year and a half to make an album
Mm,
and like pay that bill whatever it is, or I can bring a larger band on the road even though it wouldn't always pay for itself. If there's a musical opportunity that I want to take advantage of, I can say, okay, I will just write extra bios on other artists like this week because that's kind of my main
right.
source of income as a writer.
Okay.
There have been years where I've kind of, where I've just like had to make ends meet exclusively as a player, as an artist, as a front person. Um, and I felt like that was gonna, put me into a place where I was gonna have to make a certain kind of music or appease a certain audience.
Right.
And I didn't want to keep doing that.
So let's talk a bit about writing. I mean, have music and writing always gone hand in hand for you, or what?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, getting back to the like extroversion thing that I was talking about. When I was a kid, I always liked when there was a larger culture around music, or when you and your buddies all like one band and you can like talk about it and go to a concert if you're old enough. So like if there was a band that I was into, and maybe it was something that my older brother had introduced me to, but it wasn't necessarily accessible to like elementary schoolers or like however young I was at the time, I'd want to tell my friends, what it was and why it was
Yes.
good. I would want to show them. I would want to kind of sell them on this music just because I thought it would be more fun for me if they were into it also. So I think I became good at just explaining how music sounded before a person could
Hmm.
hear it like for themselves. And then my mom was an English teacher and a
Right.
musician, but she was kind of oddly I don't know. I don't want to like disparage her. She's not here to like defend herself, but she just wasn't encouraging of me being a musician on a professional level. And she was like, "Well, you need another job. You need a backup plan." And I said, "Well, I'll be a music journalist." And she was like, "That doesn't count. That's not.
Great
That is
backup plan.
equally, yeah. That's just it's hard to make a living. I mean, yeah, you
Yeah.
know the, you know how hard that can be. But after college, I had an opportunity to continue with, the band I was playing with, or I had an opportunity to go to New York and work at Spin Magazine. And I went to New York. And, for a number of years, I just kind of like jumped around in the magazine industry, which even in that era, I mean, that was 20 years ago, but
Mhm.
everything was closing or like tanking,
Yeah.
magazine budgets were constricting. And eventually kind of I got to a good place in the journalism career and kind of looked around and realized, why am I climbing up this ladder? Like this was my backup plan. And
Right.
I wound up at Rolling Stone. I feel like I got to the top of
Right.
of that ladder, and it wasn't the ladder that I had wanted to climb.
You're
So I
better
was
off
like, I'm
making your
gonna
own ladder.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I became a freelancer and my own boss like you, and began playing music. So yeah, they kind of yeah, they have always gone hand in hand. And for a while I used to think that I needed to keep them separate, or that it would illegitimize, or is that the word, like delegitimize me as an artist if it came out that I was also a music journalist. But I think it's just all part of the same whole. Like I work in
Yeah.
music, I work in the music industry, and sometimes I play for Elizabeth Cook, and sometimes I'm writing my own stuff, and sometimes I'm
Mhm.
writing about other people who are making music. But it's all part of the same circle.
It's a really unique position because I mean I've interviewed other, you know, authors, Michael Azerrad, other people who have written music books. And I've
Yeah.
interviewed obviously 1,000 artists, but there aren't very many guys who are sort of in the position where you are, where both of them are valid professions. You know what I mean? There's a lot of music writers who are, you know, yeah, you got your crappy little band and vice versa.
Yeah.
But I can think of Bill Janovitz, you know, from Buffalo Tom,
Yeah.
who's put out a few books now,
I
and
love
you,
Buffalo
and
Tom.
really not a lot of others, you know.
Yeah, there's the who was the guy who was in the Del Fuegos, and then he wrote the book on Tom
Oh,
Petty.
Zane's, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Warren Zanes.
Yeah. So three. Okay, we
Yeah,
got three.
there's three. And yeah, I've thought about writing a book, but then I've thought, God, that must be so difficult. I feel like it would be like writing like 8 albums at once or something, just so daunting.
Yeah.
um yeah, it is a weird like dual career to have. But I mean, I'm lucky because
Yeah.
yesterday I was up late, I was wrapping up a bio, and I didn't want to be up until 1:30. I mean, we had driven from Oslo to Bergen, which is like a long drive. It's like up in these mountains. It's gorgeous, but
Right.
it's kind of a harrowing haul. You have to be like awake for it.
On. Yeah.
And I was exhausted, but it's helpful to have a job that I can take on the road with me. And it's extremely geographically flexible. I could do it
Hmm.
from the moon if the moon had
Yeah.
Wi-Fi. And I remember, like, in 2011 or in 2012, you had to have those like portable, like Wi-Fi devices. I had to like pay extra every month with Verizon to have this small little, it looked like a grenade, and that created
Hmm.
my Wi-Fi, and it was a pain in the ass to keep it charged. And now I can just use my phone, and I'll always have Wi-Fi on my laptop. So it means that I'm always working and I can never clock out. But it also means, again, if I'm on the road with the 5 piece and we're opening up for somebody and we're getting
Yeah. You
paid
can
like
sit
two
backstage
hundred
and
dollars, and
yeah.
that covers one of my bandmates, like I know that I can always keep working. It's not like I have, like a waiting, I'm not waiting tables and then I leave, town and that income stream is gone. I can keep the income stream
Right.
going.
I'm gonna top you on the techno gear thing here because I'm so old that when we first got computers at the newspaper that I worked at, when there was
Yeah.
like it was a little thing. It was actually made by Radio Shack. It was called a TRS 80. It was the nickname to trash,
Oh,
and you could literally see like 6 lines of copy in this little tiny screen that was just over the keyboard. Um,
yeah.
and in order to file, if we went out to review a concert or whatever, you'd sit there and write with everybody going, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" But then when you went to file, you had to find a telephone, and you had this thing. It was like two suction cuppy things and a wire that you would jack into the machine. You had to dial in to the line, wait for that shit, slap the cups on, and then when
Yeah.
it ended, you would have to go through these 18 different steps to select your file and send it over the line and this and that and the other thing. And then you had to call
Jesus.
in to make sure somebody somewhere got it.
Yeah.
It was hell.
It was hell, but I'm sure. I mean, I feel like I missed the golden era of music journalism by a couple years. I mean, I have
Hmm.
friends. I don't know if you know Sarah Rodman.
No.
She was at Entertainment Weekly for a while, and then she was a music editor at it was either LA Weekly or LA Times, but just a fantastic music journalist who comes from the era um where it really really mattered, and you could have actual like relationships with like Bruce Springsteen or Bono or
Right.
I don't know. I just like I've enjoyed the fact that I can go to a concert, then just come home and like on my laptop, like wrap up the article and email it in, rather than having to like do
Yes.
it in the press room at the venue or call you know call the late night like desk at a newspaper and like dictate what I want my article to be. I'm glad that I
Done
don't
that
have to do
too.
that. But part of me
Yeah.
also kind of wishes that I was around in that era to do that.
Yeah. Talking about relationships, does it ever, I mean, obviously being a musician gives you a leg up in a lot of ways in terms of, having the insight and the experience and being on a level sort of playing field with a lot of the people you talk to. But does it ever cause awkwardness? I mean, do you ever like walk into the room and everybody shuts up because they're going, up, reporters here, you know?
Maybe I think when I mean, to be honest, I no longer really write for Rolling Stone, but
Right.
there came a point where um, just to be as active in the Nashville scene as I was, um, I just kind of like decided I need to have a pen name. So I began to write under an alias.
Oh, what was
And
it?
it was Robert Crawford.
Oh, okay. That's boring. I thought you would have come up with something. Yeah.
No, it is, well, so Crawford
Uh-huh.
is my middle name and Robert,
Okay.
so my brother is Robert Jason Leahy, but we call him Jason. So Robert is kind of like his middle name, even though it's his
Okay.
first name.
Uh-huh.
So it was kind of a nod to that. And it wasn't because, I wasn't writing anything like disparaging or critical about anybody.
Right.
Um, it was just, when you are friends with a lot of musicians and they realize,
Yeah.
oh, you write for Rolling Stone, and then they're like, we should go out for coffee. And then you're like, I mean, yes, we should, but do you want to go out for coffee because you want to hang out,
Right.
or do you just want me to get you on this like list of like the like
Right.
top 10 new Americana artists, like
Right.
this month, which we did every month, which um I just and I don't want to like offend anybody. I think everybody I want to get all my friends into Rolling Stone.
Sure.
So if it ever you asked if it ever caused any awkwardness, yeah, sometimes. And then I do live in fear of like the I don't know, I probably wrote like 10 bad reviews in my life on bands. This is when I
Hmm.
worked at a place called allmusic.com. I don't
Hmm.
know if you know that website.
Oh yeah,
I worked there
I
from,
sold them some stuff. Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked there from 2007 through 2011, like reviewing like 8 albums a week for 4 years. I'm terrible at
Right.
math, but that's a lot of album reviews. And I remember I was assigned, I think it was OAR. It was,
Hmm.
like that
Yeah.
band. And I knew those guys when I was in college. I knew them to be like, and I don't mean this in a critical way, but I knew it to be kind of, like a frat party band or maybe like a hemp necklace kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
band. And then they put out this album. It wound up, I think, going gold. It was a big album. And they had a big top 40 hit called like Turn the Car Around or something. But just it sounded like a bad, like a Snow Patrol or a bad Coldplay. There was like tons of reverb and not in the cool 80s reverb way.
Not in
In
the
the
way that
gloss
you wanted it. Yes.
in the glossy, we don't have anything beneath this, so we're just gonna like slather it with a bunch of
Right.
polish kind of way. Um, and I wrote kind of a bad review on it. I was just like, hey, it's like these guys are like swinging for the fences and they don't
Mhm.
necessarily have their eye on the ball when they do so. And I got contacted by the producer years later. He found me on Facebook or something, and he had a
Oh,
bone to
wow.
pick from this like review that was already like a decade old. And I responded and was just like, hey, like, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to offend you. I mean, but also your album went gold. Like, who
Yeah.
cares what I think? And he
Yeah.
wrote back and was like, yeah, actually, I like that. I like that. We're cool. You and I are cool now. So yeah, yeah, I live in fear of that. And to be
Oh,
honest,
that's
I've written some not great like reviews on people that I've played with too. They don't know that. I'm not going to point it out, and it's not either of the people that I'm in the room with. But
I was just gonna say, yeah, look to your left, look to your right.
I'm good. I'm
Oh,
good in this room. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, one of my favorite pieces of hate mail I got was there was I think it was actually on 9/11 by pure coincidence. Bob Dylan and Nickelback both put out an album that day,
Ugh.
and I reviewed them both. And I got an email from somebody who asked me how the hell I could ever rate a Bob Dylan, how I could like an album by that washed up hack Bob Dylan better than Nickelback. So
Yeah. I
you
mean, I
can't argue with
remember
logic like that.
I remember when the what was the big Kings of Leon album that had Sex on Fire and Use Somebody? I forget what that
Right, right,
album
right.
was
Is that
called,
a
but
Aha Shake Heartbreak or whatever? I don't know. Whichever one it was.
N-
Yeah.
Shea Heartbreak was the good one. Well, that was
Right,
that was that was their second, and the big one it was their fourth. But I remember it,
right.
like they'd been on tour with U2. I had interviewed them around that time. They'd been on tour with U2. They heard how these U2 songs kind of echoed around the arenas, and they
Yeah.
wanted to have music like that as well. And so they came out with this album, which again was really popular, but I think it was the point it was the point where I became less interested in the band.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
remember I wrote a review on that album and said it sounded a little bit like Meatloaf. It said it sounded a little bit like Journey. And I like Journey and I like a
Sure,
good
sure.
bit of Meatloaf, but I did not like that album. But I remember getting like hate mail from the people who I think were kind of like, like diehard Kings of Leon fans. Like, how
Yeah.
could you say it sounds like Journey? It doesn't. But then I think once you hear use somebody in a Kohl's, like department
Yeah.
store for the hundredth time, you probably, you probably begin to think it sounds a bit like Journey, and
Yeah,
not the good
exactly.
Journey.
Right. So I'll let you go pretty soon, but I want to jump back to one thing you said a while ago when you were talking about growing up with this music being in the air.
Yeah,
And I totally get that. I was in fact going to ask you about that because there's a lot of people who I find a lot of times when I interview artists, they end up going back to the music of that they were sort of way too young to appreciate at the time.
yeah,
And I don't want to get too heavy, but I know that your mom passed away recently, and condolences on that.
I
And I'm
appreciate
kind of
that.
wondering that to me, is this sort of in a way, harking back to those days, is this sort of in a way not really necessarily a tribute to her, but
Mm.
kind of thinking back to your youth and all that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That's a very, yeah, insightful way to look at it. It might be. I think there's like, I mentioned earlier, just like looking out of the window, like in my mom's car and kind of like
Yeah.
imagining that what I was seeing was a music video for the music that was playing on the radio.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, there's something in that. I can't even really like isolate what about that experience feels so formative, but it's an itch that I've tried to scratch with like a bunch of albums. And there was a song on one of the Americans, I think it's American Sag Volume 2, called Missing the Missing. And to me, it gets to just kind of like the minor key gunmetal gray sky through like a rainy windshield feeling that I feel like
Right.
I always like I need to go back to. And I don't know why. And like you said, it might be a thing where I miss my mom. Um,
Being
I don't
nostalgic
know.
for not only the music, but everything. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
that's I mean, and like you said that you don't want to get like too heavy. If I can just get heavy for a minute,
Sure.
um, when so I have a speech impediment. I've had it my whole life. It was really noticeable when I was young, in an era
Yeah.
where like to be the kid who couldn't get a word out was like the worst. I mean, you're like a pariah in your classroom. And so when so like music, especially like kind of like the discovery that I could sing, um, that was really huge for me because like it was, I discovered that I could like, I had a way to like express myself like verbally and not be laughed at. And before that, I mean, I don't recall a time where I didn't, like have like a stutter. From my earliest kind of like memory,
Mm.
I had it. And so I think just, yeah, like maybe it is kind of going back to the time where like I discovered music and, my love of it and my aptitude for it. Maybe that did kind of like locate, my love of, or like maybe that enhanced my love of music in that era, which would have been like, I don't know, like 1989 or something.
Right.
So, yeah, so maybe I'm just trying to always kind of get back to that spot when life just like changed and looked brighter and just like infinitely more possible to
Right.
enjoy and to excel at.
Yeah. Geez, between
And
the
sorry,
the speak.
I know that's quite heavy, but it's true.
No, no, that makes perfect sense, and thank you for sharing that. Honestly, I was just going to say, between the speech thing and the surgery you've had, I think God's trying to tell you not to be a musician.
I know we like right before the tour here, it was maybe like a week and a half, no, like 2 weeks before we left on tour,
Mm.
I went down to Mexico City to see Oasis with some friends, which was awesome. And then I thought I was having, I don't know, like a food poisoning thing, but it wound up like being like my appendix had ruptured. So I got that like taken out. I mean, and
Been there, yeah.
I, yeah, you've been there. And then, with the brain thing, there's all kinds of like ongoing issues with that and like ongoing surgeries.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I'm not out of the woods yet on that. There've been some other tumors that I've had to get removed. They haven't been in my head, luckily. But yeah, there is like a constant kind of like health I just it's kind of like malady after malady, but I think that also it's been good because it's just like, well, got to go ahead and get that 80s inspired album out of the way because like I remember what it was like to be told that I had a brain tumor. And I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but like one of my very first thoughts was like, but I haven't done all of these musical things yet. Like I have, but I've written 20 songs that I haven't recorded. And like if I die, what happens to those songs? And it's such a stupid thing because it's not about like leaving a legacy. It's just about doing what you feel like you're supposed to do. So like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it
you
explains a
know,
lot. And honestly, when you were talking about, wanting to do all these things and wanting to be busy and never having enough music and this and that, I mean, it all adds up when you think about it, you know.
yeah. And I think everybody has a thing that drives them. And I mean, I was lucky. I had, like I had pretty good like parents. I didn't have a lot of the trauma that a lot of my friends had. And and the early albums that I made or the early music that I wrote, I don't think was as good, but give me a brain tumor and I can write some shit about that. I can write some shit about what happens in the aftermath of that. I'm still trying to unpack what that even means or
Mhm.
what the lessons I should take from that are. And yeah, I think it's been good fuel.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, you've talked to enough musicians, and there is that theory. I don't know if it's truth or not. A lot of musicians swear it is that you need to have hardship and disaster and trauma, and those are the things you're right about. That if you're happy and content and satisfied in your life, you're just gonna make shitty music. I
It's
don't
true.
know if
And I
that's
mean,
true.
you can maybe look at a guy like Bruce Springsteen, and I mean, he had a lot of trauma, but he wrote songs that weren't true. I mean, like he admits this
Yeah,
in his book. Like he wasn't ever a mechanic. He didn't do any of that
no, he didn't
shit, but he
drive.
really
Yeah,
totally, but he kind of like painted himself out to be this like,
yeah,
this like, like archetype of the American worker. But it's just like you've literally only ever played rock and roll. That's not,
yeah,
I mean, that is an archetype, but it's not the relatable character that you painted. So I think, you can be imaginative with your writing and quite compelling still, because I think like he's amazing. But yeah, I think good art, I think you are pushed to make good art to make sense of something. And you can try to make sense of happiness, but I think what we have to make sense of are the things that really eat away at us and gnaw at us, whether it's like, what do I do with the near death experience, or like how do I really like feel about my mom passing away, or any other
yeah.
traumas that other people have had. So yeah, I know how I kind of get music out of mine, and I think there's a lot of mileage left with that. So like maybe we'll be talking in another year and a half. I hope we do. We can unpack
Uh,
whatever else I'm going through
I
then.
hope so. Are you already thinking about the next album, or are you still?
Yeah. Yeah, I have two tracks already, completely recorded, and I almost held this album and put those on there. But I mean, I spent so long working on Kick Move Shake. I just kind of like made myself get that one out there. So yeah, there's already like, new music in the can. I might just, I don't know, like do the thing where you don't like do a whole album. You just kind of like put
Right.
out tracks as they arrive. I mean, I'm a big fan of the album. I don't know if that's like a prehistoric like a perspective to have or not. Um,
I think it works however it works. You know what I mean? If the songs stand on their own, just then go for it, as opposed to trying to shove them in somewhere
yeah,
else to just to have a thing. I think it works however it works. I mean, if there's one thing that the internet kind of, if there's one positive of the internet sort of destroying all these rules and norms and everything, it is that you can kind of get away
you can
with
make your
whatever
own.
whatever works. So are you inching toward the 90s? Are we like a decade away from the grunge album or
Let's see, the grunge album. Well, I mean, I've got a song called Glitter Queen, which is kind of like a T-Rexy,
are you
Oasis-y.
going
I mean,
back?
like yeah, but going back, but also kind of like hitting that an Oasis thing. But it's also kind of got like a tongue-in-cheek, like Fountains of Wayne thing going. Um, and then there's a
All
song
right.
called Make the Whole World Wait, which is absolutely 80s, but also a little War on Drugs, which is 80s but modern. I mean, I think like, there's more itch I need to scratch with the 80s thing, but I don't think I need to be as on the nose as I was with this record. Kind of like with the Airwaves record in
Right.
2019, I really wanted to drive home, a Tom Petty connection. Like
Yeah,
we,
it was there. Yeah.
we like Tom Petty. We want to be like torchbearers of that. And then it worked. We got to play the like official like a Tom Petty birthday bash in Gainesville, which was cool. We got to get to
Nice.
know his family. We got to play his like a birthday event like during COVID. We covered a song, put it on YouTube, and then I got to be on the road with Mike Campbell for a bit. He signed my Les Paul guitar. So like that worked. I made that point. And I mean, he's still my North Star, but I don't think I need to like bash people over the head with it as much. So,
Right.
I mean, I do like grunge music. Like maybe that'll be, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, like maybe that'll be in 2 or 3 albums. You and I
All
will be
right.
talking in like 8 years about that.
I'll be here waiting. All right, man. Listen, I've taken up enough of your time. I'll let you get back into your sweats and get some sleep. And I'll say thanks again for the music and thanks for your time today. And I don't know. Well, yeah, we'll see you somewhere down the road.
But this was an uncommonly enjoyable interview. I appreciate all the questions. Like this, I wish it could go for another hour. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. It was definitely fun. You've got great music and something to say. And ironically, I'm going to be in Nashville next week. So but you won't be home, or I buy you
I
here.
won't be. I think I'll be
You'll be
where
in
are we next
Austria
week? Are
or
we in the
wherever.
UK? Where are
Yeah.
we in Scandinavia,
Nice.
Sweden and Norway. Well, like
Still.
tell Nashville that I miss it and let my cats know that I'll be home to scratch their heads soon enough.
All right, brother. Well, listen, thanks again. Talk to you later.
I appreciate it, man. See ya.
Bye.